Congratulations to Philadelphia winning the Supporters Shield. Hartford Athletic also wins some silverware. And is the USL overpromising and under-delivering? That and much more on Monday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. You found your way to Morning Kick Around, the show. We cover the world's game being played right here in the United States of America, dotting the map of the American soccer landscape live right here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. I'm Robert Kerr, local soccer guy. To my side, Jason Davis, radio soccer guy. Together we are Morning Kick Around. How you feeling, partner?
I'm good. Excuse me. Let me get the voice right. It was my birthday weekend, so I did a couple of things, hung out with the family, had some friends over yesterday. So if I'm a little worse for wear, you'll understand why. The voice might be a little extra gravelly today, Rob. I mean, it wasn't up too late, but at this age, anything you do affects you negatively physically. So I'm working through it.
A little too much hooting, a little too much hollering, got your voice a little scratchy, huh?
Yeah, that's me. That's what I was doing. I was hooting and I was hollering. That's what I was doing yesterday.
Classic action. Well, happy birthday to you and to Zlatan as well. Can't forget about him. But on the show ahead today, we got some great stuff. We're going to give some flowers to those winning trophies and silverware over the long weekend. We're going to talk about attendance numbers in the USL, as well as maybe some overpromising as another club announces a postponement in their launch date. So we'll dig into that and more. Shout out to everyone tuning in. Morning Kickaround hit 500,000 views over the weekend. We were creeping up on that, so that's quite the landmark. So 500,000 views on this channel. Very excited about that. And if you want to support the show, you can obviously watch along, comment on these shows. You can also hit the subscribe button. Doesn't cost you a darn thing. Or become a member. Become an MK Ultra like Andy. Thank you for jumping in, becoming
Thank you very
MK
much.
Ultra. Longtime and consistent viewer and contributor to the show. Thank you for hopping in. Just $3.99 a month. You get priority commenting on these live shows, early access to videos, bonus content, and access to the Morning Kick Around Discord server. All right. Should we get to the show?
Let's do it.
Let's get to the show. Let's kick Monday's long balls here on Morning Kick Around. Philadelphia Union earned their second piece of major silverware over the weekend. A 1-0 victory over NYCFC earned them the 2025 Supporters Shield. Congratulations to Philadelphia and all their supporters.
Yeah, incredible stuff for them. I mean, I watched the last couple of minutes of that game. Again, birthday festivities, lots of stuff going on, but I managed to check in on that game as it was wrapping up. And that did not look like a team that thought the Supporter Shield wasn't important, that it was just, oh, ho-hum, whatever. They responded to winning the points title in Major League Soccer like it was the championship. And I'm glad for that, right? There lots of hugging, lots of crying, the stereotypical cliche shot of players on the field, hands to their face, basically like overcome with emotion. I'm glad that was the case. I'm glad that the fans in Philadelphia got to enjoy it. I saw this shot, found this shot somewhere. Just a very cool shot of the team there behind them, the tifo from the Sons of Ben. That's the River End there in Chester, Pennsylvania. They obviously, very much cared about winning this thing. They celebrated it like a major championship. Obviously, they would like to go on and win an MLS Cup, Rob. That they're not going to stop now. There's another trophy on offer for the Philadelphia Union. But in a league and in a country where we wrestle with how much importance to put on something like a points title, I'm just thrilled that there was like a legitimate natural reaction to winning this. They achieved something great in a year when very few people thought they could do that.
Yeah, a bit crazy journey that Philadelphia Union fans have been on compared to where they were at the beginning of the year. But yeah, palpable atmosphere watching it through the television. You could tell as the minutes were ticking away, the anxiety and the excitement and just the raw emotion was coming to the surface. And Alejandro Bedoya was probably my favorite player and face to see in the celebrations. Obviously, he was red-faced, teary-eyed, long storied career. Probably, I'm not sure if has he announced that he's coming to an end, or are we just assuming
I
that
don't
that's coming soon?
believe that Alejandro Bedoya has said anything about his future, at least not that I've caught. He got
But an
elbowed in
elder,
the face. He got
oh
elbowed in
yeah,
the face, Rob. And he was
yeah,
not
yeah. As the
happy
final
about it.
whistle was going, he was bloodied nose, wasn't he? Yeah. So
Yeah.
he definitely a definite soldier's performance from Bedoya. Good to see someone working it, really grinding it out in his career, getting some rewards, winning the supporters trophy, and definitely in the crowd. I watched it with my son, and he had Dupe in his head. The rest of the weekend after watching that, it obviously meant a lot to the fans too,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
everyone was, arms on each other's shoulder, jumping to the Dupe song for the celebration. That was a ruckus. That was a true confetti day for Union fans.
I've thrown up a poll for all of the viewers this morning on Morning Kickaround. Simple question on the after the Union's win: is the Supporter Shield a bigger trophy, a bigger accomplishment than MLS Cup?
You're
Right?
going there, eh? You're
I'm
going
gonna
there, eh?
I'm throwing the chum in the waters. I think it is an interesting thing, and I don't know that there's a wrong answer here. I know people, oh, that's sitting on the fence. For me, winning a playoff championship on the field in that manner is what I am attracted to. It's what I, as an American, particularly having grown up with the NFL, Major League Baseball with series, things like that. That's what I think of when I think of winning a championship. I think of doing it on the field by beating someone else. And obviously, like, there are cup tournaments all over the world and they matter on some level. It depends on the country you're talking about. Like, is Coppa Italia big? Yeah, it's okay. It's big, but obviously those Serie A teams want to win the Scudetto. Is the FA Cup big? Yes, it's big. It has this incredible history. They play it at Wembley and all those things. And if you're a Crystal Palace, it's a massive achievement. But is it as important as the Premier League? Obviously not. And so here in the United States, when we flipped that dynamic on its head, because we do playoffs, it's an interesting question because I think a lot of people would say that the better measure of a team is having more points than anybody else after 34 games.
Yeah, and here's a point coming over from the chat from a brand new member, Andy. Supporter Shield is an unbalanced schedule, so it's nothing more than a CONCACAF Champions.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Now, I will also say though, Andy, like you're right that because there's no balance to the schedule, and with 30 teams, you're obviously not doing that, right? You're not playing, what is that, 58 games to determine your Supporter Shield, your champion. You're not doing that. Uh, because it's an unbalanced schedule, it's not a perfect measure of who the best team in the league is, or it's not as close to perfect as you might get in a league where you have 20 teams and you play 38 games, and that's your champion. But I will say that to Philadelphia's credit, Rob, they won this out of the tougher conference this season, right? They won this out of the East, which if you look at the East and the depth of teams in the East, it's way stronger than the Western Conference. And that's not to take anything away from San Diego or Vancouver, who have been very good all year. It's just to say that if Philadelphia is having to do this against Cincinnati and Orlando and Nashville and Miami and all these teams that are really legitimate contenders to win a trophy, that says something about them.
Yeah, Philadelphia, after that win on the weekend, 66 points with Cincinnati, the closest competitor in the Eastern Conference, on 62. And then over in the Western Conference, San Diego and Vancouver both on the 60, unable to catch up to the Philadelphia Union after that.
This is an interesting point
victory.
from a homeless shoe. Until the Supporter Shield gets you a star, it's not more important than MLS Cup, because MLS Cup gets you a star, but a Supporter Shield does not.
Is
Now,
there an official star giving ceremony, or is that does MLS dictate who gets a star or not?
yeah, they have rules around that. I believe they have rules around that. In fact, I think we are at a point now where the LA Galaxy, because they have so many trophies, but so many MLS Cup titles, that it was there was a color scheme added to the way that stars. I don't know. I guess
Star or something.
There's a gold star that represents the 5th title. So if you have 5, you can put a gold star. I think the Galaxy chose to actually have at this point they had a 6-star, right? So I don't know. I guess they do 6 stars. They may choose to do that, but obviously you could do 5. You could do 5 and 1 if you have 6 trophies, the way the Galaxy do. So that and we're this is a young enough league that is that those things are interesting to see kind of evolve. But as a homeless shoe says, that the supporter shield doesn't get you a star. MLS Cup gets you a star. And if the league wants to change its approach to that and maybe find something else that gets added to a badge for a supporter shield title, which is still an achievement of note, that would be interesting.
Moving along to our second long ball of the day, Hartford won the USL Cup over the weekend. They traveled all the way out to Sacramento, a packed Sacramento stadium, over 11,000 folks in the house, only to see their home team lose to the visiting Hartford Athletic, getting a 1-0 victory in the USL Cup final.
I like this. Now, I don't like this because the city of my birth lost in this final. I was born in Sacramento. Didn't live there very long.
That you were celebrating.
They didn't know. They didn't know. They let me down. One of the few things that didn't go right this weekend on my birthday weekend. But shout out to Sacramento for getting to the Jaeger Cup final. Obviously for Hartford. For Sacramento's won things, right? Sacramento's a team and an organization that has won things in USL and established themselves as one of the preeminent teams in this league. Hartford 8-1 until this, right? Hartford was struggling to matter in this league. I mean, they just haven't figured it out yet. The recipe for success in Hartford has been tough to come by. 17th in their first year. Obviously, we had 2020 and the COVID thing. They made the playoffs through a group phase. 2021, they finished 5th and missed the playoffs. 2022, they finished 10th. 2023, 12th. 2024, 10th. And right now, with the ongoing season in 2025, the jury is still out, but we're getting down to the end, and it seems like they probably won't be a real contender for the MLS for the USL Championship, Rob. So for them to get any silverware, they're in 5th right now. They could get into the playoffs, I suppose, but whether they do anything when they get there, that is a question. But for them to get this one might mean something, right? It might catch a little attention in Hartford. It might allow them to grow from a position of confidence. Like there's some good stuff here. And I think cup tournaments are more interesting, right? Particularly the kind that, plays out over a season during a season. US Open Cup, Jaeger Cup in this case, they're more interesting. Or even if you want to look at Europe, when a team you don't expect or when a team that hasn't won anything before, for whom it matters more. And again, let's look at Crystal Palace. Let's look at Newcastle last season, winning the League Cup in England. It mattered more to those teams and those fans because they hadn't done it before. Now, Hartford doesn't have the history of either one of those franchise or those clubs in England, but they do have some history, and their fans have been frustrated. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, so their league form isn't spectacular. 11 wins, 5 draws, and 10 losses. So middling there in league play, but able to get it done in the cup. And to your point, they were able to, gleam some victory, have a celebration day, whereas they wouldn't. So the creation of this cup seems worthwhile in a time and a landscape when there is a lot of competitions and players are playing a lot of games. This one seems like one of the most useful and practical additions, like when it comes to new tournaments. It seems like something that helps definitely USL 1 clubs, get more localized action depending on the team, and then kind of introduce a kind of a soft launch of inter-league play between the different levels at USL.
Yeah, it obviously that part of it is what makes it unique. There's nobody else that can set up a tournament between teams at different levels, nominally at different levels. I mean, again, if you really want to be pedantic about this, you could talk about how American soccer, we apply these labels, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. They don't really matter because there's no interchange between the divisions. You're kind of just arbitrarily determining something based on what standards they meet for the number of clubs or the size of the stadiums and those kind of things, right? When we've spent a lot of time on this channel talking about the PLS, and trust me, that's not going anywhere. We're going to be talking about PLS a lot more in days and weeks to come. But that still feels like something interesting. It still feels like something new to have USL League One teams playing USL Championship teams. I guess one thing I would say, without really having any sense of this, And I don't know why they would. I don't know why they would make significant changes, but you wonder, Rob, what happens to the league, the USL Cup, the Jägermeister Cup, if it stays that sponsorship, when we do get to Division One and Pro Rel? Are you going to be playing this tournament across three different divisions, and are you going to be doing it? You know, if the calendar is kind of tricky at that point for USL to figure out as it moves teams around and gets itself settled, will they continue to do this?
It'd be pretty interesting to see all these different teams at different levels. If it comes to that point where there's three different tiers of teams playing all against each other, but that's a lot of what ifs. Given when there's a third tier, will there be more games in the regular season when the format changes, when there is a new division added, or will those leagues be smaller, thus
Yeah.
needing to fill in the calendar, adding the need for that? It's really hard to say at
Well,
this juncture of
it keeps
where we stand.
and obviously what I think was interesting the way that USL handled this too, and something this is something we talk about the US Open Cup, which is of course not administered by a league, it's administered by US Soccer, and they're kind of working within they're working within the constraints applied by the leagues that are participating in the US Open Cup. But didn't we just say, wouldn't it be nice if the US Open Cup final happened on a weekend?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if it happened on a Saturday or a Sunday? Wouldn't it be nice if we could center our attention and our focus and make that the showpiece that it could be in American soccer? Okay, Austin versus Nashville, US Open Cup final on a Saturday. Everybody's paying attention. That's not how that works. But in USL, and again, it's a different competition. It's very new. It's unique to them. But they chose to make this an event on a Saturday when they were going to get a full house at Hard Health Stadium, when they were going to get the attention of especially Sacramento and Hartford, but potentially the rest of USL as well. Hey, look, here's this thing that's happening. This matters to us. We're playing it on a day when it gives its proper due.
Yeah, 11,569 the official attendance at this USL Cup final out in Sacramento. An impressive display. It looked good on television. It definitely looked like a good atmosphere and a championship atmosphere. Something was on the line. Something was to be won in that stadium in Sacramento. A day, obviously, home fans going home a little bit disappointed.
Yeah.
The away team coming in there and snatching the USL Cup. But congratulations to Hartford Athletic on winning the 2025 USL Cup. Other domestic trophies won recently. The Canadian Championship, Vancouver Whitecaps beat Vancouver FC in the Canadian Championship.
I believe that's a four-peat. Is that a word I can use? Is that a word? I believe it's a four-peat for Vancouver winning the Canadian Championship. They have just dominated that competition. Of course, that's essentially the U.S. Open Cup, the FA Cup, but for Canada. And it's gotten more interesting with some of those Canadian Premier League teams coming in, because for a while it was really just the MLS teams playing against one another. But now you've got this, and yeah, Montreal and Toronto can't sniff this competition because Vancouver's got it on lock.
And then earlier, probably at the same time that the U.S. Open Cup was being played, the Galaxy fell to Mexican side Toluca in the Campeones Cup, which meant something a little while ago. But now that the CONCACAF Champions Cup and the Leagues Cup are there, like, what is the Campeones Cup now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's this. It's one of those things that is useful for MLS fans and boosters of MLS when the MLS team wins, particularly when the other team is good, because then you can say, oh, look, is closer to Liga MX than ever before. I remember when Atlanta won this over Club America. This is 4 or 5 years ago. And it was Miguel Herrera who was in charge at Club America, and he made a big deal before the game of saying, this matters to us because what Club America does is win trophies. We win trophies. That's what we do. If it's on offer for us, of course we're going to go win it. And Atlanta won, and it began. And I think that was even like the Frank de Boer era. Like there was not. It wasn't even Tata Martino. It was like after him that Atlanta wins this competition, and it's like, oh, look at this MLS beat. It matters. Now, I don't know that it means anything in the grand scope of the battle between Mexico and Major League Soccer, but I do think it mattered on the day for Atlanta fans, and I imagine that for LA Galaxy fans, it would have been nice to have this as a silver lining to what has otherwise been a very terrible season for them.
Yeah, and it's kind of wild how bad their LA Galaxy's regular season has been, but they've still had the opportunity to participate in some higher level competitions this year, despite their bad regular season. Moving on, long ball number 3 here on Monday. USL Championship announced that their attendance hit 2 million on Saturday night. And this is, according to the USL Championship, the 4th year that they have hit that mark. Doing so, overall attendance currently projected to increase over last year's, and so you got to say that's a decent number. I think someone in the Discord server, the Morning Kickaround Discord server we can access by becoming a member, was doing the math, and this is about 5,500 attendees per game across the USL Championship.
Yeah, I mean, like it's one of those things that, and I'm not saying that USL shouldn't be trumpeting this. Like they shouldn't be saying, "Oh my God, look at us, we got 2 million fans." It kind of loses some power when you consider the context of it, right, Rob? When again, when you do the math, and I suppose as American soccer fans, we beggars can't be choosers. So we can't look at this and go, well, that's only 5,500 fans a game. What is that? Is that even really worth celebrating? But it's not been that long that we've had a second division league that could say it draws more than 5,000 fans a game. It just hasn't been that long, right? That's kind of a new development. I mean, they're saying how many this is the graphic they threw up. How many years in a row now for this, Rob?
4
4
years.
years in a row, right? And you have to walk before you can run. And you have to run before you can sprint. And you have to sprint before you can become Superman and fly, I guess. I don't know where that's going. But this is just a step on the road to what USL wants to be, which is, I imagine, a league that can do 6,000, 8,000, 10,000 fans per game, that has more. Again, the better USL looks in terms of consistency around things like this, Rob, the more likely it is that when clubs get ready to launch, they actually get to launch, and that the towns and cities in which they are playing go, hey, you want to build a stadium? Here's a plot of land. Or an ownership group can justify this through investment. Hey, we're going to put together a bunch of people and spend a bunch of money to build a 15,000 seat stadium for a second division. Remember, a second division team at the moment. Now, it could be a first division team, but even then, it still won't be MLS. Right, it'll still be in a different category of American soccer. So you kind of got to chip away at this, right? And I think that this represents that. I mean, again, I don't want to say like, oh, look at USL, it's coming for MLS's throne or something because they got 2 million fans. I think it has to be put in context. This is a reasonable achievement for USL, and I hope it. This is not something that we are right now. We can celebrate it a little bit. And I hope we don't become jaded to it down the line. But obviously, you would like to be 3 million or 2.5 or something that represents significant growth year over year, in particular because USL has continued to grow as a league. So you water down this number a little bit. If you're not doing year over year total season growth, right? If it's not like, oh, it was 1.8 and then it's 2 and then it's 2.2 and then if you are adding teams and adding games, but not adding actual fans through the turnstiles, your average is actually going to flatten out, right? So that's kind of part of this as well.
You can tell where USL's head is at with this, as well as part of the press release for the attendance numbers. It says the league's year-on-year consistency has coincided with the construction of new soccer-specific venues around the league this year, including Rhode Island opening their Centerville Bank Stadium. And then there's a quote here from the championship president, Jeremy Almbaugh. Reaching 2 million fans this season, the USL Championship, a reflection of the passion of the sport we're seeing in the communities. But here's the part that I like. Our clubs continue to raise the bar on and off the field, and the growing energy in our stadiums shows the incredible momentum behind building professional soccer in the United States. So even they're talking about attendance, they're also saying, see, build stadiums for it because there's all this momentum and there's themes going here, there, everywhere, new stadium, new team. Talking about attendance, the stadium aspect is on the front of the mind.
Yeah, look, and again, this has to take the crispy do. Want to divide by your 500,000 by numbers of streams or just to enjoy your success? Yeah, I mean, we can do both, right? Internally, Morning Kickaround can look at our stream numbers and go, okay, well, what does this represent in terms of number of videos or minutes that we're on the air or whatever it is? Like, if we want to use those analytics to determine what our future might be and imagine how we are going to grow, that we should be doing that. I imagine USL is doing that. They're not just like sitting here going 2 million, great, well, we're done here. Everybody, somebody turn off the lights when we leave. I think they're working to grow this number. That's all I'm saying. And that this is one of those things that, like, you have to celebrate and point out, because again, it represents a consistency for USL that did not exist in American soccer before, as well as you are trying to grow as you continue to get bigger and bigger. And again, Detroit City can fit how many people in Keyworth right now?
Around 7,
maybe 7 with standing room and all of that, right? I mean, it's a high school football stadium. It's got limits to it. If and when they get their new stadium built and it's 15,000, they're going to add to this number, because I'm positive that Detroit City will be averaging more than 10,000 fans a game in that building. I don't know if they'll sell out every game. I can't predict that future, but they'll be adding to this number. And then that's the thing. We're talking about, like, a team like Detroit City going from a 7,500 seat capacity to 15,000, doubling that number. And then these numbers grow.
Yeah, Crispy Dude, talking about statistics, we can make that 500,000 number. We can put a crown on our head for that, or we could also probably cry ourselves to sleep thinking about
Either way,
the ways to divide those numbers up. But an interesting note, though, I'm not sure how they presented this, but as part of this note from USL Championship about the attendance numbers, the league honored longtime Louisville supporter Patrick Blanton as being the honorary 2 millionth fan. And apparently Saturday night was his 250th Louisville City game.
That's why they gave it to Patrick. Let's be honest. Like, they're not saying we counted and literally he was the 2 millionth fan. They're saying we got to a rough area of about 2 million. Louisville had this number for their game. Patrick has been to 249 Louisville City games. This was his 250th. Let's honor him and at the same time call him the honorary 2 millionth fan of the season. And of course, I also like the mention of what they call that rivalry between Louisville City and Indianapolis, which is the Louisville-Indianapolis Proximity Association Football Contest. So I like that. That's nice.
Thanks for clearing that up. I took my reading glasses off, and that name of that rivalry was just getting all blurry and jumbled together. So thank you for taking that off of my hands. So USL Championship continuing to make strides little by little. It would seem to say it wasn't like, they've smashed the record. I mean, anything like that. They say progress, but it doesn't really say that, it hasn't doubled or anything crazy like that. But incremental gains, I suppose, is what should be trumpeted here. Definitely not sliding back the other way, which would definitely be disappointing. But thank you for all jumping into the comments here. Apparently, I'm getting nitpicked on my 7K for Keyworth. Legal capacity, according to Soccer Night in Detroit, is 7,200. So, and it depends how many people you got peeking over the wall or sneaking around getting in there. I mean, there's different ways to get in there.
I mean, I love that. That's such a romantic notion. Kids climbing trees to watch soccer games because they don't have tickets. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's keep that going. They wearing like those little hats too, looking like they sell newspapers on the street corner. Extra. Detroit City FC playing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the local constables chase away the chimney sweep for getting a free peek at the game.
That's right. That's what I need.
All right, if you're watching this now and you haven't hit subscribe, do so now. Join the ever-growing group of subscribers to Morning Kickaround. And if you want to kick it up a notch, Morning Kickaround, join the channel. Morning Kickaround channel members are called MK Ultras, and you get priority commenting in these live streams. Get on screen here with us, early access to videos, bonus content, and access to the Morning Kickaround Discord server, which, every time I check it, there's conversations going on from local soccer, MLS, USL, national team commentary, great soccer community growing on the Morning Kickaround Discord server. If you want to do all that, just tell your friends or send a link or something about Morning Kickaround and help us dot the map together. Dot in the map of American soccer. All right, we are halfway through the show. We're going to dip into some comments about Jimmy Haslam's talking about MLS as a TV product later in the show, but we're going to dip into USL. Are they over promising and under delivering? Another team delayed. Get into that today's hot topic here on Morning Kickaround. Big news coming in over the weekend is our hot topic. Santa Barbara, another delay. They released this. You can see it on the screen. Santa Barbara Sky meant to be playing in 2026 as a USL Championship side. After a number of delays and different iterations, they were expected to play in 2026. This says pushed back to 2027. Jason and I, we had heard a little bit that there was some dysfunction going on in the front office. Some people may have lost their jobs, couldn't quite find an ownership group. And here we have it in front of us, confirmation that they didn't quite have it right. And so Santa Barbara delayed until at least 2027. And this is one in a number of teams maybe announcing a little too early. So has USL been over promising, maybe being a little too aggressive and under delivering for us here?
Yeah, let's take stock of Santa Barbara Sky before we kind of dive into that bigger issue, because I think this is illustrative of some things. I don't want to throw a blanket over everything USL is doing in terms of expansion and say, oh, this proves the model is wrong or something like that. I think that would be unfair to everybody who's working to grow USL. And of course, we are on board the dot the map train. Right? I'm talking about abundance as a way to get American soccer culture to where it can be. And again, beggars and choosers are a big part of this. So here is the statement from Santa Barbara Sky. From the beginning, our mission at Santa Barbara Sky FC has been to create more than just a team. We're building a community organization that reflects the rich soccer history, culture, and people of every corner of the 805. This is soccer country. Santa Barbara and the Central Coast deserve a club that matches the passion of this region and its fans. After careful consideration or evaluation, rather, we've decided that Santa Barbara Sky will not be kicking off next season as planned. This doesn't mean we're slowing down. It does mean you're slowing down. Let's stop with that. Doesn't mean we're slowing down. We're finalizing the ownership group and preparing for sanctioning with a plan to take the field in March 2027. Additional time allows us to do this the right way, build a club ready to thrive. And then they talk about support and where you can go find updates. And we'll come to what's on that page, Santa Barbara Sky FC.com/update in a second. But yeah, Rob, this is, I mean, it's right there. It says we're finalizing the ownership group. That is effectively saying we ain't got the money to do this yet, right? We don't have the kind of investment we thought we were going to get us off the ground. And if you look at the history of this team, Santa Barbara Sky was originally, I believe, going to be a USL League One team, right? They were going to buy into USL League One as an expansion team, set to play in 2024. However, before 2024 and before they could get to kickoff, they decided to move to 2025. And they also, in 2024, bought the franchise rights from Memphis 901, who collapsed under the weight of not having a stadium plan in Memphis, which we just talked about last week on the show, and decided where they were going to go. Now, that obviously elevates everything. You go from League One. I know we talked about these being arbitrary sanctioning names, but there is a different level. It's a different stadium size. There are other things you have to do in terms of front office, and you're obviously spending more money on players and things like that. So they decided to go championship and now have pushed back their launch from 2024, 2025, 2026, and now 2027. And I guess it's reasonable to ask if this is ever going to happen, if they're really ever going to get this thing off the ground, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, with that series of delays that you laid out, it seems like it's an idea at this point. And with that idea, they found like a front office, and I know they have a very active social media. They've been continuing since we were informed that there might be some disorganization going on behind the scenes, but they were plugging away, posting and all that as if they were pushing forward. So we're curious to see how this all was going to play out. But I feel bad for the fans that were engaged and going to their events and plugged in, expecting to be, in a stadium rooting for an actual soccer team next year.
So there's a couple things here in the FAQ that they posted on their website that I think is again, they kind of repeat with ownership sanctioning and stadium plans still being finalized. By the way, that kind of expands, right? So ownership, again, that's about money. That's about whether they have a big time backer, somebody who can meet the PLS, right? Not just put money in to spend money to get the team off the ground, but they have to have somebody who matches the requirements that US soccer has in place for a second division league, which I don't believe that they have that if they're delaying. Sanctioning, that's again part of that too. The PLS, how it applies to what Santa Barbara is doing, stadium elements, and all that stuff. Stadium plans in general, it says they're supposed to be playing at Harder Stadium. They signed a contract in 2024, a multi-year contract to play at Harder Stadium, which is on the campus of the University of California, Santa Barbara. Now, on-campus stadiums are interesting, Rob, and I don't know this is a major part of anything, but sometimes on-campus stadiums, you can't be selling beer and stuff. So I don't know exactly what that means for their financials. Like that could be part of this as well. And maybe that's what they're saying is like, we ran into, well, this isn't exactly the best fit for us stadium wise. It says what happens to season ticket holders and depositors. Existing season ticket deposit holders will be automatically transferred to the new season. So if you were expecting, hey, we're going to launch in 2026, I'm going to go see me some games. No, and now they're not going to give you your money back and you then buy tickets for 2027 or make your deposit. They're going to transfer you unless you email them. Unless you actively, I don't like that opt out situation. Like I feel like they should be like, okay, we're going to cancel everybody's season ticket deposits and start over. And we can ask you if you want to do it again. I don't love that. Sponsors and partnerships. Sponsors have the option to remain with the club, delayed launch. This is obviously money too. That's a problem for them. And I guess before we get to some of this other stuff, Rob, I would ask you, do you think this is a bad look? I mean, it is a bad look for USL, but ultimately, do you think USL bears a lot of responsibility here, or is this they bought what Peter Moore and the people at Santa Barbara were selling because it looked good? They promised they were going to get all this stuff together. Obviously, we've talked about the team in a box kind of model that USL has created. How much blame is on USL for this not happening the way it was supposed to in Santa Barbara?
Well, it seems like there was definitely an aggressive launch date. 2026 seems like a very quick turnaround. And what they bought the Memphis 901 franchise last year. So that gave them about just under 2 years or so, a year and a half to get things underway. Either there was some assumptions there was something was gonna have to, or something was gonna happen as far as a new owner. Maybe there was someone with a pen hovering over the paper to say, yes, I will be the financial powerhouse behind the soccer team. And maybe that guy's pen moved away from the paper, and something they thought was going to come to fruition in the last couple months just never happened. It's really hard to say, but you really shouldn't. Okay, so you asked me a direct question. Is this on USL? I would say yes, this is on USL for publishing and promoting the fact that this was going to happen in 2026 when that was not an absolute lock, apparently.
Okay, so that's one way of obviously addressing this is if you aren't 100% go, we shouldn't say that you are playing in a given season. We should
Right.
wait until all of those boxes are checked and you've reached every single milestone along the way. Otherwise, it looks bad when it doesn't happen. But again, I think this is a lot of what USL is doing is trying to build excitement by flooding the zone, right?
Yeah.
By throwing all every single time a new press release goes up on the USL website that says we have entered into an exclusive letter of intent with the city of whatever to build a stadium or to renovate a place so that we can put a professional team in that town. They're not saying we're definitely doing this 100%, even though that might be implied or it might send that message to the fans or the people of the city. But what they're doing is, look at us. We have so many oars in the water. Look how successful we are. Don't you want to be a part of our success? And then that momentum carries them forward. And it's an interesting mix in the chat here as the response to this. And I did throw up a poll that asked the question of whether or not USL is getting it wrong with expansion. Now, I know that's an unequivocal kind of question. You can only pick one, yes or no. And there's some gray areas here. But I do think it's interesting. So Chris saying, shout out to Chris, he's an MK Ultra, and USL needs to stop announcing teams or cities with nothing behind them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is again kind of what we're saying here. And then obviously Riverside Grove. We can't get mad at clubs going too fast and collapsing and simultaneously get mad at being cautious and slow. This is the problem, right? You can't thread this needle. There is no perfect way to do this. Excuse me. Chris saying it erodes confidence. right? Does it erode confidence in the game and in USL if these clubs don't launch or if they collapse completely? And Rob, you pulled together a list, right? Or we took a look at the teams that were supposed to start, have been delayed, maybe some that, what happened to Queensborough? I mean, I know that that's maybe a little bit more complicated in that, but it doesn't matter when people see there's supposed to be a team, we're making gear, we got a plan. Wait, what happened? Where'd it go? What, it disappeared. It's vaporware.
Yeah, from the quick poll, I know Jacksonville has had some delays. You said already Brooklyn has had some delays. West Palm Beach, Milwaukee. We've talked to people from Milwaukee. That seems like dead in the water there, and that was announced as supposed to be going on this year already. We'll have to check the notes on that. And obviously, we've talked about Buffalo. We've had some delays there too, at least one or two, and then Des Moines seems to be having some problems too. But there's been so many of them that have been announced and delayed that there might even be more on this list.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the commenters, I think it's all of those answers. It is a bad precedent to have. It does erode confidence, but you have to be grateful a little bit for the sake of us, folks like us that want to see more soccer, more teams, that they aren't just wiping them away, that they're postponing, and it's not just never gonna happen.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, like, again, your cynical instinct rises and you go, oh, well, this is never happening. They're just, kicking the can down the road. Might as well close up shop. It's not going to go. But obviously, they wouldn't say we're delaying till 2027 if they didn't intend to try to make that happen. It's not, again, we have seen teams close up shop. We've seen teams play a couple seasons and disappear. We've had teams that have been announced and then things fell apart. This one seems to be at least, again, some intention. And I took it off the screen, but on their FAQ, they mentioned they're going to continue to do community activities. They're still going to do watch parties and things around the Santa Barbara Sky FC brand, which is smart, how effective it is, or whether those people are turned off in Santa Barbara because of the delays. I can't tell you, but it's smart to do that. They say they have a front office staff. Again, you and I had heard that a bunch of people got laid off, probably because they were delaying, right? It's like, we don't need all these people if we're not ready to go for 2026. But coming back to the greater issue of how USL is doing this, again, there are absolutely some motivations here on the USL side that aren't all about kumbaya, let's make soccer work for everybody. Okay, the incentives are not just, we want to give soccer to the world, let's gift it. That's not what they're doing at USL headquarters. They're calculating just like everybody else, like every other business, and they're saying, okay, this is our business. How do we grow it? How do we get to a place that benefits us, but potentially does create a situation where we have more clubs, more soccer? That's better for everybody from a business perspective and a soccer perspective. And nobody at USL headquarters, Alex Papadakis or anybody else, is going, what we want to do? We want to announce we're going to put a team there and then it's going to collapse. That's going to be great for us. No, they're not doing that, right? They have at least good intentions of making it go. You can argue about their approach to that, Rob. You can argue about the vetting that they're doing, or whether, as we said, they need to be more cautious with announcements. But as I said, I'm in a place now where it feels to me like we have been tiptoeing along for a long time. To go back to what Riverside Grove said, we've been tiptoeing along for a long time. And I was one of those people, and I'm a kind of a cautious guy by nature, right? That was saying, well, don't want to get going too fast, too soon. We don't want clubs to collapse because then we salt the earth and fans don't want to come back. But we can't just sit here around and wait for those things to happen. We have to lower the bar. If we're not going to have organic clubs that can go through a pyramid in an open system, that's just not happening. Then this is the alternative that seems to make sense and have some sort of real world elements to it. Like a USL actually wants to do this. That's important.
And also, I think it also brings up the point that like soccer teams are really hard to start from nothing, from out of nowhere, from dust. I mean, I don't think this is a 1 or 2 year turnaround. I think to push back on cynicism on some of this stuff not working or being postponed is so that there are I think it's a case by case, club by club evaluation. What is the run-in been? Because we talk about these teams that like if there's an idea or a shell of an idea and then it's an announcement, but there's also teams like Boise who have been working on it for like a decade or so, trying to get their land and the stadium right, and they're building a stadium right now. Fort Wayne, they played USL2 for 5 years and
Right,
are in the
right,
midst of building a stadium. Now, those things aren't just going to poof
right.
disappear. Whereas, like, not all these announcements are created equal. Maybe instead of getting out over their skis and saying 2026, this is the year, maybe saying
Yeah.
that we're growing something.
And,
And
and
maybe there's
again,
that.
we it's important to point out, and it's mentioned in the chat. Shout out to the ultras who are on top of this. It's important to point out that this is fundamentally different than MLS announcing an expansion team in a given city, right? When a group buys an MLS expansion franchise, they are buying a part of the company. They are buying in, they are investing in Major League Soccer, the company, and then they are given the rights to run a club in a given city, San Diego, whatever, right? That is a completely different model than what USL is doing. And again, if you want to get in the weeds about how the money is shared or not shared, and who's making money here and who's not, and who's paying for things and who's not, fine, you can do that. Those things are important to consider. But USL is not doing a thing where they're like, well, we're being very careful about who invests in our product, and we're doing all that, and they're buying in. No, they're selling franchise rights, and those are independent clubs and independent businesses who are then on their own to make it work, Rob. So if you are USL, or if you're being cynical about this and you want to stand on the outside and judge it, are you going to say that, oh, well, that ownership group, I have a bad vibe about them, or they're making promises, but I'm not sure about that? I mean, obviously you check books and you look at economics and you do all those things, but where's the line to say, okay, let's try, versus, well, let's don't, because it looks bad, it might not happen, right? USL clearly has lowered the bar for that and said, you know what? You have intent. You say you can go get some money and get some people. That's good enough for us. Give it a go. Let's announce it. Let's put it on the website. And that's an approach. I'm kind of into this right now. I'm kind of into this right now because it makes me excited. And even if something collapses 3 weeks, a year, whatever down the road, I feel like we're trying to get to a critical mass, and that's important.
This question might cause us to run a little long on this one, though. But do you think that there's a little bit of desperation on USL to project progress and project momentum
Yeah,
to
look,
maybe
yes,
stave
yes,
off this potential
yes.
MLS Next Pro?
No, I don't think that. Okay, so stave off MLS Next Pro, no. I do think there is a competitive element to this. I don't think USL necessarily needs to think about this as we are trying to battle back against MLS Next Pro, who's encroaching on our territory. But I do think USL is behaving like so many startups, and they're not a startup, but like so many startups do, right? And sometimes those big promises cause big problems on the back end. You say you got a technology that can do a blood test from a tiny drop of blood. Oh, turns out that doesn't actually work and you've been lying the whole time. Well, I guess you're going to prison. I don't think that's what's happening here, but there is something to the general theme of fake it till you make it. Like just keep saying that you got stuff going. Just tell people everything is great, and then some people will believe you. And maybe, short of Ponzi scheme approach, you can fill the back end with people who are bringing you actual money to invest. And I think there is something, again, I do think there is something bubbling up in the interest, and particularly these medium and small towns, to launch their own professional sports franchises, and soccer is the natural way to do it.
And that we'll see what happens with Santa Barbara. Will 2027 happen? Fingers crossed that it does. But yeah, all of this in reaction to Santa Barbara Sky announcing postponement again till 2027. Thank you, MK Ultras, for getting in the comments. Lively conversation talking about this issue in
I
USL.
threw up that poll with 23 votes. If you want to vote, your last second here to vote. Throw up the poll. Is USL getting it wrong with expansion? Right now, 61% say no. So it's 61% think USL is doing it fine. Maybe not the right way. What does that even mean? But certainly doing it a way that's not bad.
I'd say we've talked a lot about expansion, but maybe if they can get back-to-back years with no teams closing, might be a bar to set.
I would like to, yeah. Let's not have a death in the community. Let's see if we can go a season without that, an off season.
Yeah, because at the very least, there's 7 new teams coming in USL 1. We'll see how many, make it back in 2027. Thank you for everyone for the comments. If you want to be an Ultra, $3.99 a month gets you commenting on screen in these live shows, priority access to new videos, bonus content, and morning kick around Discord server access, or you can just hit subscribe for free, or tell your friend or send a link of your favorite segment from this show. And also, don't forget, we're also a podcast, so look for Morning Kickaround as a podcast. All right, we got one more segment here on Monday. We're going to dip into the comments talking about MLS as a TV product here on Morning Kickaround. All right, dipping into the comments from last week's video here on Morning Kickaround, we had a segment talking about MLS owner Jimmy Haslam giving a quote saying MLS has a long way to go to garner a legitimate TV audience, and that video caused quite a bit of reaction. Lots of comments on that video, so we thought we'd dip into the comments in a brand new segment here. So, what were the ones that you found most compelling, Mr. Davis?
So I'm throwing this one up on the screen from Gregory Biestek 3431, talking about, again, Jimmy Haslam saying we need to make our product better so that we can get more TV money or whatever the quality needs to improve. This could be the best product in the world, but if nobody can watch it, what does it matter? There's a potential problem. How accessible will it be for casual fans? The MLS needs to grow. If it remains behind a paywall with numerous blackouts and restrictions, it will only be slightly better, no media at all. Outside of the diehard fans, will anyone care about any of the teams in the playoff? The USA media? No, they don't. So this is obviously about the issue of the paywall. And Rob, I don't know that there was I don't know there was a way for MLS to say no to what Apple was offering, because they weren't getting that anywhere else. And it's a difference in money that is impossible to say no to if you are running a business in which you have people you need to answer to in terms of the health and growth of the business. And let's not forget that we live in a world where if you make a choice as someone running a publicly traded company or has investors, not publicly traded necessarily, but have investors, you can be sued for not doing what's best for the company and improving the return of the investors. So there's that. And again, Major League Soccer there was nobody else coming to them and saying, hey, here's this money for your TV product. We'll give you significantly more than you've ever made for your TV rights if you put your games on cable or whatever it is, Rob. Again, the only thing that you could say that maybe MLS needs to do is stop being a slave to the money and think longer term. And that's the only real way that you can see around them choosing Apple and what Apple TV offered.
Yeah, and we go back all the way back to like March or April when the Athletic GM anonymous survey came out, and a lot of even the decision makers within these clubs were not super happy about it either, because I think they probably felt the same way as many fans did, that not as many folks are stumbling across it as they should. It doesn't really have that big footprint that they were hoping for. A lot of the time, it just seems like it can happen on Apple, and people that don't have Apple or engage with Apple just are none the wiser of what's going on. So in some ways, MLS was caught being the beggar rather than the chooser in these points. And a lot of the bigger leagues in the country this year have a huge amount of leverage, where they can pick and choose and what TV deals work out for them. But MLS's take, it's like, hey, take peanuts from over here and people might find your stuff, or here's X amount of money, more than some. The ceiling's low and the audience is debatable, but it's more solid and predictable than anything you've had before.
No, I do think that we get lost in the sauce a little bit when it comes to like, what is the MLS paywall? What does it actually look like, Rob? And how does it compare? Right? Because I think we're a little reactive when it comes to soccer, a little defensive of the way soccer is perceived in the culture. We go, oh, you put it behind your paywall, nobody sees it. What a terrible decision. There are games available. Major League Soccer does have a deal with Fox. I don't think there's any ESPN, but they do have a deal with Fox, right? Where some of those games are simulcast. Right? Still, Stu Holden and John Strong are still doing MLS games. Now they're doing MLS games while there's also an Apple TV feed with different announcers, which is kind of confusing, but that's still a thing. Apple has at various times made games free, so they're not always you have to pay to get access. It's just again, it becomes an awareness thing more than anything else.
Yeah,
It,
awareness.
it and it's worth asking whether or not MLS can continue to push that boulder up the hill to good effect, right? If they're always pushing the boulder up and it rolls right back down every time they try, is it better to go in a different direction, which is what the Apple TV deal represents, right? So the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, many of whom have put their product behind significant paywalls. I have no idea. I barely know what's going on with the NFL because soccer's taking over my life, but I'm a Broncos fan. I have no idea how to watch games. I don't know where. I don't know if I wanted to be a Bronco just to watch Bronco games. What do I need to buy? How does that work? I have no idea. I do know how to get every streaming service for every league that's available on Paramount Plus or NBC, Peacock, or whatever. Like I have all that stuff. So again, maybe it's just the fact that the people that might be interested aren't aware, and that MLS and Apple haven't done a good enough job of pushing people in that direction. I don't know, because they weren't. It's not like they were winning a public relations battle and everybody was clamoring for their product before this. Rob, what would it
It's
matter if they were on ESPN still if nobody watches on ESPN?
Yeah, they were in kind of a zero win sort of a situation, and it is hard to kind of quantify or make an argument totally for or against the Apple deal, because it is in a location. Like if it comes to mind, where do I want, like, where's the MLS? I know it's on Apple, but I am definitely not in the general population of the United States, television watchers that know that. Do they need to put more commercials in mainstream things saying MLS is on there? They've done ad campaigns talking about MLS as being on Apple. And so it is really hard, because it wasn't, they didn't like turn their backs on like some overwhelming successful media
Yeah.
partnership and then go to one that's completely different. It's kind of turning one kind of shrug of the shoulders to a slightly different one that lasts a lot longer than
We judge
than
our
previous ones.
sports. We judge sports, period, and particularly in the U.S., where we have the monster that is the NFL, and an NBA that has become, the sort of the sport of a younger generation over the last decade, 2 decades. We judge every sports property by those standards, right? We
Mhm.
judge like it's that thing about like what are they talking about at the water cooler? Well, I don't even know if water coolers exist anymore, but if they did, like what are they talking about at the water cooler? Are Bob and Tom coming to the office on Monday morning and really talking about the soccer game or the MLS game that they saw? Now, again, MLS is also in this situation where I think because of the media landscape, it's really hard. It's really hard to be new, which MLS is. Like even if you're talking about 30 years, you're still relatively new on the scene compared to those sporting properties that have been around for so long and become part of people's lives. Your entire life as a Steelers fan circles around the Steelers schedule. That has not really been the case. There are MLS fans who live that kind of life, but it hasn't really become the same thing that the NFL has become. So are you better off? And this is a question I don't even know if I have an answer to. Are you better off going off to your own corner and really just putting your games on for the people you know want them most and who will pay you maybe 25, 35, $55, whatever it is? Or are you better trying to carve out some sort of major cultural weight that is almost impossible to imagine can happen in the modern era?
I think this comment really talks about some collateral damage that we haven't included into the conversation yet, is the local affiliates kind of being cut out of the equation with this new deal, because I think soccer, much like baseball, is so regional heavy or localized
Yeah,
heavy. Like
yeah.
I know that I don't watch any until the playoffs. I don't watch any baseball outside of my own hometown team. And then a lot of people build relationships with their home commentators, their home broadcasts, and those seem to have been cut out per what Chris
Well,
is saying
okay,
here.
but again, it's a give and a take, right? You say, "Oh, we lost our local broadcast." You know how bad some of those local broadcasts were? How terrible they were? How terrible they made the league look by virtue of a terrible local broadcast? And I imagine MLS was thinking, "Hey, can we just like you make this a more uniform approach?" And that's the thing, like you cannot really say anything negative about the quality of the broadcast that MLS is doing on Apple TV.
Not
Like
at
that
all.
is
I
an
enjoy the 360.
incredibly high quality broadcast. You got 360, you got this extra stuff, multiple languages. Like they are not scrimping on on what they're doing when they broadcast their league. So again, give and take. All right, we
I would
got
say
another.
early, just one last note about the local broadcast. When I first started tuning into USL broadcasts around 2010, 2012, I did enjoy trying to guess which other sport the commentator usually does rather than soccer. It's like, is this a hockey guy, a basketball guy?
Oh, always,
Because
yeah.
the
There's some
local
hockey
hockey guy in the
guys.
offseason would
Ooh,
do soccer.
baby. Yeah, that is a thing. Okay, let's go to a different comment on that same video. This is from Wasatch One Touch. I don't think Europe understands that the US is coming for all of it. MLS will be the Super League replacement in the future. I think what is going to be the key is MLS is going to just have more quote unquote super clubs than any other league. All of Miami, LA times two, New York times two, Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Houston, DC, Philly are bigger than every big league European metro except for three: London, Paris, and Madrid. Just the sheer numbers will win out eventually. I think there's a lot of steps between now and what Wasatch One Touch is talking about, Rob. But look, and I don't believe that this is really going to happen, but it's something interesting to consider that as the world moves away from sort of traditional models of sports, and there are clubs in Europe who are chomping at the bit to change the paradigm and maybe go in a more American direction, would MLS stand to benefit in that world?
Yeah, there's a lot of steps there. It is fun to kind of like think about that in the future. And what is this, like 50, 60 years in the future,
It's a
perhaps?
good question. I don't know, man. I
Like it
don't
is
know.
fun to hypothesize, and maybe so. Like they take all guardrails off, and as time develops, yeah, they become the big spenders just because the size of the cities and the way economics might be going or might change in the future. But it is kind of wild to think of, in certain regards, there's probably now already some Major League Soccer players have come here rather than Saudi Arabia, perhaps. Like Messi, there was a debate, did he choose MLS over Saudi Arabia? So I guess in very incremental decisions that may already happening to a degree, but to think of Major League Soccer as the power player, what sort of barriers have to be broken here? There's quite a few. It's like
What what I
we're not
think
the
is most
underpants gnomes here.
what I think is most what's missing from the calculation here. And again, I understand why your brain would go in this direction. But what I think is missing is that we are becoming a more and more dislocated sporting fan base across everything. Like it doesn't. There are obviously people who want to go to the games. There are people who want to go and experience that live. And local fans will always be the heartbeat of a club. And I definitely think that we are in a dangerous moment right now in some regards where clubs are starting to take their local fans for granted or not necessarily center those local fans in what they are thinking about long term. But if we do continue to move in this direction, we've got millions of people around the world who watch their team and care about their team and live and die with their team and will never be close, never will be within 1,000 miles of the stadium that they play in. So if it doesn't matter where you are because your product is being broadcast across the world and you can generate a fan base and generate revenue and have all those things that come with being a club, why does it how could New York or Miami or LA or any of these big cities in America overcome Madrid and Barcelona and Manchester and all these cities that have storied franchises, storied clubs, not franchises, storied clubs who have a history that people connect with that none of these MLS teams can touch?
It's generations. This is generational stuff. I'd have to believe. Like so many different things would have to change. And then, teams like Chicago, I feel like they could, in theory, become a super team if all the people that loved soccer in Chicago galvanized around one
But that's
team.
exactly the point,
That's a
right?
super.
That's exactly the point. And it comes back to the media landscape that we live in. We are blessed to have the ability to watch whatever we want, wherever it happens. As long as you make accommodations in your life for getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock on the West Coast, you can watch your team from anywhere in the world. So how could a Chicago team with millions of people in Chicago, or hundreds of thousands at the very least, soccer fans who just do not care about the local team? And even if the quality, to Jimmy Haslam's point, even if the quality goes up dramatically in Major League Soccer because suddenly they're spending on the level of some of the big five leagues in Europe, it doesn't mean that those people who are already Real Madrid fans and Barcelona fans and PSG fans or whatever are going to be like, oh, yeah, now I care about the Fire. Let me support them. And now everybody who's a soccer fan in Chicago pays attention to that because they do not have to. There was an era in sports when we created all of these connections, when we created our habits, when our families became the fans of the teams they became fans of, where there was no choice. You were either going to the game or listening to it on the radio locally. That was it. You couldn't watch a game on television. When television came in, you had local teams on television. You didn't have national games. You maybe had one. Monday Night Football broke everything wide open by putting a game on national television for everybody to watch. And obviously, that at a time when there were 3 television stations, and people created habits around that. And now everybody in America watches games on Sunday and Monday nights, or Thursday nights sometimes, crazily, that they do not care about who wins the game. They are just watching it because that's what we do as Americans. How do you overcome that if you're trying to make soccer that level? How do you overcome that? Because there is no rewinding time to go back to a moment when everybody in Chicago has no choice but to support the local team because you don't have access to anybody else. We all have access. I can watch whoever I want right here.
That's true. That's true. Right there in your pocket. And I think time is ultimately the only thing that can do this, because 150 years ago, whatever, baseball was America's pastime, and right now it's definitely American football is it's in people's blood now, and maybe it takes another few generations to have it turn to the
None of
world's
this is
game,
to
but
say
maybe it
none of
even
this is
never
this.
does.
Well, none of this is to say. Look, I don't think I think you're going to set yourself up for disappointment if you're like, well, if MLS doesn't become like the NFL, what are we even doing here? That's not going to happen.
Do we ultimately want that?
We don't. Yeah, I don't need it to happen to be happy with my soccer or to care about my domestic league, right? I've found my connection. I'm an American. I want the American domestic league to be good, but even if it's not rated among the best in the world, that doesn't make it invalid. It doesn't mean it's not worth watching. It's mine. You're going to go tell people, hey, don't watch the Polish first division. It's terrible. If they're in Poland and they support those teams, they don't care. They don't care. Now, obviously, they would love to maybe do something in the European competitions or whatever, Rob, but it doesn't stop them from going crazy when their team wins the Polish title in a given year. Like that, I don't know, that thing where we're judging each other by what we care about and we're making decisions about what is sort of legitimate soccer and what's not is ridiculous, because you can like whatever you want to like and make that legitimate. USL Championship. It's the top division of soccer in America. No. Might you tell Hartford Athletic fans are wrong for celebrating winning that trophy in Sacramento? Of course not. For them, it's massive, and it should be. This is what this is all about.
Thank you to the comments leading to this conversation. That's fantastic to see so many people chiming in there and chiming in on our live stream. And note that any comment that we receive here might turn into a segment or might be referenced on one of our shows. So feel free to continue to chime in.
Fire off those hot takes, like the hottest possible takes, so we can put them on the screen and talk about it.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And this is a community driven thing. We're dotting the map all together, dotting the map, stadiums, teams, and morning kick around members. So, and I did see in the morning kick around Discord server, we do have some more dots to add to the map as well. So some more dots expanding the footprint of the MK Ultras. Great to see. Great show as always here today, and we'll be back on Wednesday. So before we go, hit subscribe if you haven't done so. Consider becoming an MK Ultra. Get on screen for these live streams. Priority access to videos. You get them sooner than everyone else. Bonus content and the Morning Kick Around Discord server, which has been a lot of fun and great to see grow indeed. And then so we'll be back on Wednesday. You got any final thoughts there, Mr. Davis?
No, that's it. Go soccer. Is that a good one? That's a good thought, right? Go
Yay,
soccer.
Yay, sports and soccer.
Yay, yeah. We like sports and we don't care who knows.
All right. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Until then, enjoy that soccer.